Positive and negative covenants in property laws.
Dear viewers, welcome to yet another episode on course of property law. I, Dr. Vijeta Singh from Assessmania Law College, Jalgaon, Maharashtra. Today we are going to discuss the positive and negative covenants in property law. Let's start with the introduction. The Transfer of Property Act 1882 is a used piece of regulation in India that oversees the transfer of property. It incorporates arrangements connected with the unflinching and mobile property. Positive and negative covenants are fundamental parts of property exchanges, and they assume a pivotal part in the characterizing the privileges and commitments of the gathering in questions. In this extensive conversation, we will investigate the ideas of positive and negative agreements under the Transfer of Property Act 1882, analyzing their definitions, suggestions, and lawful importance. Prologue to the Transfer of Property Act 1882. The Transfer of Property Act, established during English rule in India, means to control the exchange of property. The demonstration characterizes property comprehensively, enveloping both steadfast and mobile resources. It lays out the lawful structure for different property exchanges, including deals, home loans, rent, and gifts covenants. Covenants are promises or agreement made between the parties engaged with the property transaction. These arrangements might force commitments or limitations on the gatherings. Agreements can be extensively characterized into two classifications: positive covenants and negative covenants. Importance of the covenants in the property transactions. Let us see. Agreements are urgent components of a property exchange, as they characterize the freedoms as well as expectation of the gathering in questions. They give a lawful system to guaranteeing that the exchange of property happens without a hitch, with the two players complying with their particular commitments. Positive covenants includes promises to follow through with something with regards to property transactions. These covenants require the party to make explicit moves or fulfill certain obligations. For example, a positive contract in a property deal understanding might require the merchant to convey the property in a specific condition, or it might be command the purchaser to make opportune installments. Positive covenants with regards to property exchanges are commitments or the arrangements that require a party to perform explicit activities or embrace specific commitments. These covenants are certifiably situated, illustrating what a party is supposed to do as opposed to what they are limited from doing. Positive covenants assumes a significant part in guaranteeing the smooth and legitimate execution of a property, moves, leases, covenants, and different exchanges. In this nitty-gritty investigation, we will dive into positive agreements, analyzing their temperament, models, lawful ramifications, and implementation components. Positive agreements in property regulation involves commitments that command the land owner to perform explicit activities or cause consumptions connected with the land. These covenants requires proactive measures to keep up with or improve the property. A model could be pledge, convincing the proprietor to construct or keep up with the specific designs on the land. Positive covenants stand as opposed to prohibitive agreements, which force restrictions, assure uses, In property exchanges, the enforceability and recharging of the positive covenants can be critical, lawful contemplations. Nature of positive covenants. Positive covenants makes confirmed commitments with respect to the covenanter, the party making the commitment. These commitments are for the most part pointed toward working with the appropriate exchange, use or support of the property. Positive covenants are authoritative in nature and are planned to lawfully restricting between the gatherings engaged with the property exchange. If we take some examples of positive agreements, delivery of possession in a deal deed or movement, the merchant may decidedly contract to convey ownership of the property to the purchaser on a predefined date. Maintenance. A positive covenant might require the transferee to keep up with the property in a great shape, guaranteeing that vital fixes and upkeep are performed. Payment of assessment and contribution. The transferee might pledge to make good on all local charges, service bills and different duty related with the property. During the exchange time frame, compliance with the guidelines. Positive covenants might specify that the transferee will conform to drafting guidelines, building regulation and some other legitimate prerequisites pertinent to the property. Timely installment. In contract arrangements, positive covenants frequently incorporate responsibilities to make covenant home loan installments, insurance installments and local charge installments. Notification of changes. The party might contract to illuminate the other party about any huge changes or occasions influencing the property like modifications or encumbrances. Importance of positive covenants. Positive covenants add to the general enforceability and execution of property exchange. They guarantee that vital moves are initiated to keep up with the property's estimation and usefulness. For example, a positive contract requiring the installment of a local charges helps in defending the property against lawful complexities. Positive agreements hold critical significance in property regulation, filling in as commitments that force landowners to make certifiable moves to upgrade or keep up with their territory. The important lies in: first, property support. Positive covenant frequently expect landowners to perform upkeep errands like structure, upkeep, finishing or different activities that add to the property's prosperity. Second, land use enhancement. These covenants might incorporate arrangements that plan to work on the general use and worth of the land. Guaranteeing use in a way helps both the proprietor and the local area. Third, legal conditions. Understanding and tending to positive covenants are vital in property exchange. Enforceability and restoration of these commitments can influence the lawful parts of property, possession and moves. Next, benefit passing. The advantage of positive agreement can be given to ensuring the landowners, adding to the drawn out supportability and improvements of the property. Next, enforcement of positive covenant. Positive covenants are the most part enforceable through a court request for explicit execution. On the off chance that a party neglects to satisfy its positive pledge, the impacted party might look for legal intersections to urge execution. Requirements of positive covenants. Implementing positive covenants frequently includes judicial procedures, and the impacted party ordinarily starts a claim looking for the suitable cure. Initiating legitimate activity. The party looking for implementation of a positive pledge documents a claim against the defaulting party, illustrating the idea of the contract, the particular break, and the ideal cure. Court procedures, official actions include introducing proof, contentions, and legitimate points of reference, supporting the case for explicit execution or harms. The court will evaluate the benefits of the case and make an assurance in a view of the realities introduced. Execution of court order. Assuming that the court awards explicit execution, it gives a request guiding the defaulting party to satisfy the positive contract. Inability to conform to the court request might bring about the additional legitimate ramifications for the resistance party. Now let us see challenges in upholding positive covenants. While positive covenants give a lawful system to guaranteeing the presentation of specific activities, here are viable difficulties in implementing them. First, feasibility of a specific performance. At times, explicit execution may not be a functional or doable cure. For instance, in the event that the topic of the positive agreement is extraordinary, or on the other hand, assuming the consistence is strategically troublesome, the court might be less disposed to concede explicit execution. Second, delay in legal procedure. Judicial procedures can be tedious, and getting a court request might take a lot of time. This postponement can affect the adequacy of explicit execution, particularly in exchange where there isn't a movement to spare. Conclusion: positive covenants are integral to property transaction, guaranteeing that the parties included fulfill their commitments for a smooth and fair exchange of property privileges. These covenants, supported by the legitimate course like explicit execution and harms, give a structure to responsibility in property related arrangements. While challenges in authorization exist, positive covenants stay a fundamental in characterizing the obligations and activities expected for the appropriate execution of property exchanges. Negative covenants. Promises not to do anything are known as a negative covenants. The parties' actions are limited by these covenants. Negative covenants are frequently used in real estate transaction to safeguard the rights of both the transferor and the transferee. A lease agreements are negative covenants. For instance, can forbid the tenant from subleasing the property without permission from the landlord. In the context of real estate transactions, commitments of the agreements known as a negative covenants limit or forbid a party from taking a part in specific actions or behavior. The rights and interests of the parties to a property transfer or lease mortgage are vitally protected by the covenants. We shall examine negative covenants in depth in this investigation, looking at their nature, instances, legal implication, and methods of enforcement. A negative covenant, sometimes referred to as a restrictive covenant in the property law, places limitation on how land is used in order to protect the value and pleasure of the nearby properties. These agreements, which are important in the real estate transactions, are enforceable. Legal action is usually taken against those who violate the established limitations as a part of enforcement. Negative covenants can be enforced particularly while the contract is pending, while affirmative covenants which demand a certain behaviors could not be enforceable against later landowners. What negative covenants are like? By outlining certain behavior or acts that are prohibited, negative covenants impose obligations on the covenanter or the party making the vow. Negative covenants concentrate on limitations, restrictions, or prohibitions intended to stop certain activity as opposed to positive covenants that call for specific actions. A negative covenant examples. Depending on the specific of the property transaction, negative covenants can occur in a variety of forms. Here are a few typical instances. No subletting. A negative covenant in a lease agreement could forbid the tenant from renting out the property to a third party without getting the landlord's express permission. No structural alterations. In a property transaction, a negative covenant may forbid the transferee from changing the property structure without the transferor's permission. Non-compete clauses. Negative covenants may contain non-compete clauses which forbid the transferee from carrying out identical businesses operations within given region for a predetermined amount of time. These clauses are particularly common in transactions involving businesses or commercial assets. No new lines mortgage agreements, including negative covenants, may prohibit the mortgagor from putting a new lines or encumbrances on the property without the mortgagee's approval. No change in a use. A negative covenant may restrict the property's uses to a certain use, and it may be against the law to alter that use without permission. Changing residential real estate into commercial space is one example. No transfer of ownership. A negative covenant in some real estate transactions may forbid the transferor from selling or giving a title to the property to a third party while the transaction is pending. Significance of the negative covenants. Negative covenants hold equal significance since they avert undesired action or modification that might compromise the property's state or worth through the establishment of restrictions on acceptable conduct. These covenants help to safeguard the interest of both the transferor and the transferee. Negative covenants are essential to property transactions and have a number of advantages. Risk mitigation by prohibiting specific actions that can negatively affect the property's value or use. Negative covenants serve as a risk management measures, reducing possible dangers. Preservation of a property value by prohibiting behaviors that could harm nearby properties or degrade the surrounding area. These covenants, usually referred to as restrictive covenants, help preserve and increase the value of the properties. Legal compliances. By outlining price, restrictions and responsibilities, lowering the possibility of legal conflicts and guaranteeing respect to the agreed upon agreements. Negative covenants ensures legal compliance. Enforceability. They give parties a foundation for legal enforcement, enabling them to file a lawsuit in the event that the agreed upon limitations are broken. This gives the parties concerned a measure of security, stability and predictability. Negative covenants help to ensure stability and predictability in a real estate transactions by defining restrictions on the use of the property, giving purchaser, seller and other stakeholders peace of mind. Negative covenant legal implications. A breach of negative covenant may give rise to legal implications, and the aggrieved party may pursue remedies to compel compliance or recover damages for any losses incurred. Injunctive relief. If negative covenants are broken, the main legal remedy is injunctive relief. To achieve injunctive remedy, one must acquire a court order that forbids the party in default from carrying out the forbidden actions. For instance, the landlord may file for an injunction to stop further subletting if a tenant violates a negative covenants by subleasing without authorization. Particular outcome in certain situations. A specific performance could be an option in some cases as a remedy for negative covenants breaches. This would entail a court order telling the party in default to stop engaging in the forbidden behavior. Damages. In the event that negative covenants are violated, damages may be demanded as a remedy. Much like with positive covenants, the person who was harmed may pursue financial damages for whatever losses they endured as a result of breach. Enforcement of negative covenants. Injunctive remedy is a commonly used to enforce negative covenants. A party who is harmed by negative covenant breach has the right to get a court order to stop the offending party from carrying out the forbidden conduct. Covenants, both positive and negative, in the particular property transactions. Different sets of positive and negative covenants are included in the different property transactions. Let us examine these covenants in relation to a few transactions involving common property. Property sale. Possession delivery, ensuring the property is free of encumbrances and maintaining possession of the property until the transfer is finalized, are some examples of a positive covenant in property sales. Negative covenants may prohibit the seller from selling the property to a third party or putting up any new lines while the deal is still pending. Lease agreements. Positive covenants in the lease agreements may requiring that the tenant maintain the property, pay rent on time and abide by all applicable laws and ordinances. Negative covenants may prohibit the tenant from doing things that could harm the property, such as subleasing without the landlord's approval or altering the structure without authorization. Mortgage. Among the positive covenant found in the mortgage agreements are the obligation to keep up with the property taxes, insure the property and notify the mortgagee of any changes to the property's condition. It may be against the terms of the negative covenants for the mortgagor to add other mortgages to the property or to change ownership without the mortgagee's approval. Legal implications of covenant breach. When covenants are broken during property transactions, there may be a serious consequences from the law based on the term of the covenant and the relevant legal principles. The harmed party may pursue remedies. Remedies for breach of positive covenants. The aggrieved party may request particular performance in the event that the other party breaches a positive covenant. A legal remedy known as a specific performance allows the court to force the party in default to fulfill the agreed upon duty. If the injured party cannot be made whole through a specific performance, they may be compensated with money damages. In property law, there are a number of remedies available to deal with the breaking of a positive covenant. The purpose of these remedies is to force the party in default to carry out their positive duties. In property law, there are a number of remedies available to resolve and guarantee compliance with violations of positive covenants. The purpose of these remedies is to force the party in default to carry out their positive duties. The following are typical remedies for the positive covenants breaches. Particular performance. The court may direct the party in violation to carry out the particular duty mentioned in the positive covenant. Injunctions. To stop the person who is breaching the positive covenant from breaking it again, an injunction may be requested. Damages. The party that has been wronged may be entitled to monetary compensation for losses brought on by the breach. Rectification. Ensuring conformity with the positive covenant, rectification entails making amends or reversing the effects of the breach. Termination of lease or agreement. The aggrieved party may have a right to terminate the lease or agreement in the event of serious breaches. With the use of these remedies, the aggrieved party can effectively prevent the breaches of positive covenant. Remedial actions for negative covenant breaches. Injunctive relief may be taken in the event of a negative covenant breaches. Court decrees known as injunctions forbid the party breaking the law from carrying out the forbidden behavior. The goal of this treatment is to stop more injury or damage. In certain situations, monetary damages could also be granted to make up for any losses incurred as a result of the violations. In property law, there are a number of remedies available to resolve and guarantee compliance with breaches of negative covenants. Injunction in order to stop an infringing party from carrying out the forbidden action specified in the negative covenant, courts may provide injunctions. Damage. The aggrieved party may seek monetary compensation for damages incurred as a result of the negative covenants violation. Specific performance. In some circumstances, the court may order that the party in violation take a particular step to make amends and follow the terms of the negative covenants. Rescission or the termination. If negative covenants are broken, the aggrieved party may choose to rescind or terminate the contract of agreement. Rectification. Ensuring conformity with the negative covenant. Rectification entails making amends or reversing the consequences of the breach. These remedies offer a variety of ways to deal with negative covenants violations, giving the injured party the freedom to select the best course of action for their particular situation. Practical difficulties and considerations. The enforcement of covenants presents certain practical difficulties and considerations, even given the legal framework furnished by the Transfer of Property Act. Specific performance challenges. Getting a specific instruction isn't always the best course of action, and it can take a time. The possibility of achieving specific performance can be impacted by variables like the nature of the obligation, feasibility, and the court's discretion. The practicality of injunctions. Although they are useful in stopping continuous violations, the parties concerned must cooperate for their enforcement to be carried out. Alternative remedies may need to be investigated in some situation where it may be difficult for the injunctive relief to be followed. Let us see a case. The Transfer of Property Act's interpretation and implementation of a positive and negative covenants have been influenced by the number of court rulings. These examples shed a light on how judges handle covenants related disputes and the remedies available to the parties. Roper versus London, 1883, the principle that specific performance is the right remedy for the breaking of positive covenants in a property sale agreement was established by the court. The court emphasized how crucial it is uphold agreements to transfer property. Let us come to the conclusion. In summary, there are primary two kinds of land covenants. Generally speaking, a positive covenant mandates payments or place a duty on the parties to take certain constructive actions with regard to land. A restrictive covenant, on the other hand, limits how the land may be used and enjoyed. It is critical to understand the difference between positive and restrictive or negative covenants. This is due to the fact that in cases where a covenant is a positive in nature, the burden, that is the obligation to the uphold the covenant, does not usually bind successors in title, while it may if the covenant in negative. In real estate, restrictive covenants are frequently found. They impose obligation on owners and tenants to refrain from doing certain things or to do them in a way that protects the value and pleasure of the adjacent land. A declaration of a restrictive covenants, which is an independently recorded documents or a deed, both contain restrictive covenants. Generally speaking, covenants are only deemed legitimate if they make sense and benefit every property owner in the community. A legal document known as a declaration of covenants, conditions and restriction sets down the guidelines for planned community. In property law, covenants, both positive and negative, are essential in determining the rights and responsibility of the parties engaged in the property transaction. Positive covenants requires positive activities from the landowner, usually requiring them to maintain a fence or submit designs prior to building. These covenants support appropriate land use, generally community standards and property maintenance. Negative covenant, restrictive covenants, commonly referred to as negative covenants, place restriction on specific behaviors in order to protect the interest of both the covenanter and covenantee. They provide a stable and peaceful property environment by preventing activities that can reduce the value of the property or interfere with its intended usage. Thank you.